Hi, I'm Ilan Navarro. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and mastery method coach. And I'm going live today with Dr. Emily Kiberd, who is a Hashimoto's exercise expert. And we're going to be chatting about movement and building strength and resiliency and how that all comes together when it comes to mental health. So, a little heads up, we're going to be talking about movement and exercise and weight and body composition. So, if you're actively recovering from an eating disorder or get triggered by any of these topics, please be mindful to maybe skip this and take care of yourself. But we will be talking about the importance of building strength in our bodies, not only for long-term health, but also building resiliency in the mind and the appropriate ways to train. And I think she will be joining us any second now. Thank you, everyone who's here already. Feel free to drop questions either into the comments or I don't know if Instagram still has that little question mark option. I don't see it at the bottom. So just type any questions you have into the comments, and anything relating to exercise and movement and also autoimmune conditions. Dr. Kiberd focuses specifically with individuals who have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition where the body attacks the thyroid, which has huge implications for how we feel, energy levels, body composition, a lot of physiological symptoms. So I thought it would be really great to chat with her because Hashimoto's also correlates a lot with inflammation. And I work a lot with women who are, highly sensitive individuals, have challenges with anxiety and depression and disordered eating and just a whole variety of things. So I really like the approach of gentle movement, gentle nutrition, really paying attention to our bodies, being attuned to our bodies. And I'm just going to message her real quick to see if she is hopping on. One moment. I think she's trying to join. And we will begin in just a second. So yeah, as I was saying, the Hashimoto's approach, there's a lot of inflammation, the body attacking itself. And so traditional protocols are not the way to go. There she is. So we are going to chat about more of a gentle, attuned, mindful approach to your workouts, your mental health, and how those two really fuel and interplay together. So just getting her on here. If you could request to join, I see that you are here and with us. So if you can accept, we'll begin. Hi.
Hi there.
How are you?
I'm good. I am sitting in my car because we are on day 4 of a mold
Oh,
remediation.
oh no.
Yeah, so we can
Well,
talk about how that
absolutely. I
and
was going to say, good for you for getting that mold out of there because that
yeah.
has a huge impact. I was just doing a very brief intro while people were hopping on. You work a lot with individuals with Hashimoto's. I myself am one of those people that struggles with Hashimoto's. That's why I'm really grateful for your very attuned guides and protocols for these individuals because it's a beast of itself. We really have to take care of ourselves in a different way than maybe like the standard American approach. So if you could just give us a tiny little intro of who you are and your work, and then we'll kind of get into conversation and questions.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Emily Kiberd. I've been a chiropractor since 2007. I had a practice in New York City, you know, by um by the time when I closed it 2020, which was COVID, um uh I was mainly seeing autoimmune population. So from a movement strength perspective. So when most women with an autoimmune condition meet with their doctor, it is, let's go over your labs. We're sitting across from each other. Let's make a game plan, right? No one's looking at you from, how do you pick up a weight? How do you hold yourself? What joints are moving too much? What's not moving enough? What is the quality of your muscle tissue? What is the tone of your muscle tissue? Can you even engage your muscle tissue? So that was the work that I did with the Hashi ladies, and really seeing consistent things come up in terms of physical structure, in terms of complaints of where they're, where certain joints are achy, muscles are achy, and really helping them to get strong, because with fatigue being such a big player, it is so frustrating with workouts, because we want to work out, we want to sweat, we want to get that endorphin rush, but oftentimes we'll feel really fatigued, or we'll feel like we're hit by a bus, or we'll get a Hashi flare
Yeah.
up, right? A flare up of our symptoms.
Yeah.
So teaching women how to prioritize their muscle tissue in terms of working out, um, so that they can have more energy, right? More muscle tissue means more mitochondria, more energy, and to do it in a way that is sustaining, where, sometimes with Hashimoto's, especially with that adrenal component, you hear this all the time. They're like, oh, I pushed it just a little too much and then I got sick. And I
Yeah.
feel like I'm getting sick all the time.
Yeah.
So how do you increase your load? How do you create progressive overload and push it, but not create that, oh, I'm getting sick all the time
Yeah.
kind of feeling? Yeah.
Yeah. Right before you hopped on, I was just telling the people tuning in that the reason I really wanted to chat with you is I work a lot with women. My whole practice is basically women, women's issues, anything from anxiety, depression, life transitions, autoimmune conditions. And the common thread there is really attuning to our own individual needs. And that's why I really love this approach, is because there are very specific things that we have to be aware of. We have to learn to communicate with our body, listen to those little gentle cues. It is a lot of mindfulness and awareness, and dealing with the emotions that come up also, of, like you said, feeling fatigue and all of the physiological symptoms that come with an autoimmune condition, and the frustration. I think a lot of things that I hear from my clients is like, well, it's not fair, like other
Mm.
people to live their lives in this certain way, and I have to be so hyper vigilant about this, or I have to be so aware about that. And I, like, call me crazy, but I kind of look at this condition as almost a blessing in disguise, because for me it really helped me attune to myself, listen to the body cues, know what to pay attention to. Like, it's almost like the self-care has to be a priority. It can no longer be this luxury. You really have to care for your mind, your body, be aware of so much more. But that can be a blessing in disguise, because it can be very empowering. It can be very liberating. It can help with setting boundaries and knowing your limits. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that a crazy thought process, or
No, I think I just had jumped off a call because I also do one-on-one, kind of like a functional nutrition approach, kind of root cause medicine. And the last question she asked was like, well, when can I just eat like a normal person? And I was like, I don't want to eat like a normal person. I don't want to be eating 4 pieces of pizza for lunch and just eating whatever I want, sprayed with whatever. So I prefer to like be very, not clinical, but very, attuned to what am I going to eat such that it nourishes my body?
yeah,
How am I going to move to nourish my body? How am I going to choose, like, every choice in my day to feed the muscle tissue, to have more energy, to protect
yeah,
energetic boundaries,
yeah, yeah,
which
absolutely.
the normal person doesn't do. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I have a background with disordered eating. And so it really is not about like vilifying food either. It's not like
Right,
this is a bad food or
right.
good food, or avoid this or avoid that. It really is communicating with your body. What am I craving? What does that craving mean? What's underneath there? How is this food going to affect me in the immediate present, in the future? There's also an element of that we need joy, we need pleasure, and we need to engage with our food in a joyful way. It can't just be like we're afraid of things or we completely avoid things. but it does require an extra layer of mindfulness and awareness and knowing how it's going to affect our bodies, and either certain food combinations or for a temporary period of time, maybe staying away from something to see how that affects how you feel. But really being mindful, it's not so simple as like always avoid this and this is bad and this is good. And it's unique to every single individual also. There is no just blanket like this is going to work for you.
Yeah, and I think food is often a first step, like kind of in terms of a dial mover, because it's something we do every day. It's within our control. But then you have to do the next step, right? Is there, nervous system dysregulation?
Yes.
Is there an underlying gut infection? So I'm just like you, I'm always asking the why.
Yes.
Um, because I think some people are like, I went gluten free, I'm taking my thyroid meds, why don't I feel better? And I'm like, that's like baby step one.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so much more to investigate.
Yeah. Let's talk about movement. I know
Yeah.
we kind of wanted to chat about movement and strength and how physical strength can also improve our mental resilience. How do you like to approach that?
Yes. So I approach movement, especially with the autoimmune population, from the angle of how do we feed our muscle tissue? Because I think there's two ends of the spectrum in terms of recommendations for workout, right? So typically from the conventional medicine, it's just move your body more. Like, doesn't matter what it is, just move it more. And then I think from maybe the functional medicine aspect, it's, well, don't do too much, don't overtax your adrenals, do some chair yoga, maybe go for a walk. And I think that's okay for a certain population that hasn't started the journey of looking at inflammation and hasn't started the journey. But I would say for the other 80%, we need to feed our muscle tissue by picking up a weight, um, in moves that have good carryover for life. So am I going to do like a million bicep curls? No. Do I want to learn how to pick something up so that I can pick up my kids, like a deadlift? Yes. So I really reframe it from like, how can we feed our muscle tissue? Because I think oftentimes with workouts, there can be a tendency of, how do I punish myself? And right, our workout is not to punish ourselves, our workout is to nourish
Yeah.
ourselves. And so how can we kind of flip that script? So if we're like, oh, I'm going to put my shoes on and go for a run until I sweat and feel like that endorphin release, that could be coming from a place of like, how do I punish my body?
Yeah.
I think if we think, okay, how can I feed my muscle tissue, have more muscle tissue, lift weights, create that mind body connection? Because you can't just lift a weight and disconnect. I think a lot of people, when we do a cardiovascular, like running, and not to vilify running, but we use it to disconnect. I've heard that for
Mm-hmm.
years from patients, like, oh, I go for a run because I'm so stressed and I just forget everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can't really do that when you lift a weight. You actually have to create that mind body connection so that you don't injure yourself, right? So that your form's on point, your breath is on point, you're feeling, okay, when is it that I'm hitting fatigue? Um, so it's very much an attunement versus sometimes I think we use cardio as a disconnection.
Yeah.
And so that's how I frame it. It's like, even if you do love running or walking, let's create a baseline of strength so that when you do go do those things, you're not having joint pain because you have more muscle to protect the
Yeah.
joints. So that's how I frame working out. And then if you love to run, whatever it is, let's build those on the days that you're not doing your 3 days of strength training.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is, I think something that I never grew up with, like the concept of strength training or building muscles. It was always like weight loss and get as skinny as you can possibly be. Like I grew up, early 2000s with a lot of that like heroin chic messaging. And
Yeah.
then you get to be in your 30s and 40s, and then you're like, oh my gosh, muscle mass is so important for the rest of our lives, for aging, for movement, for bone, having healthy bone density. Like it is not about vanity here. It really is about feeling good in your body. And generally that tends to radiate out when we feel good and strong and like we're in taking care of ourselves in a mindful way. That tends to radiate out. But really shifting that mindset too, like you said, it's not about punishment. I think my associations with exercise when I was younger were very much along the lines of like, you have to undo what you ate, or you have to work out, you have to do these things, instead of now it's joyful movement. What feels connected? What feels good in the body? What brings me joy? Even like having the psychological association of punishment or any kind of negativity, it's a counterbalancing. Anything good you're doing for your body is going to be negatively affected by the stress hormones that are being released, because your body is literally responding to it as almost like a trauma of some kind. It's like working against yourself when you don't have that mind body connection to the movement that you're doing.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
So what, and that's the other thing too, is like, I think more harder pushing through was always kind of the mentality, whereas you totally flip the script on like heavy, but less repetition, and tuning into your body and taking rest in between. It's not just go, 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 check, you're done. It's listen to your body, connect to your body. What are some initial ways that people can start to kind of shift their relationship to exercise into this more mindful or attuned way?
Yeah, I mean, so I start everyone with the breath, right? So especially as women who maybe culturally have been taught to like suck in, pull the belly in, skinny up the waistline, like all those kind of things. If you did that when you pick up a weight, you will actually compress the joints. You're not creating good stabilization in the core. So every single woman I'm teaching, okay, how do you breathe? How do you brace your core? How do you get your brace in your core to match the load? So if you're going to pick up a lighter load, you don't need a huge brace. If you're going to pick up, body weight, 1.5 times body weight deadlift, you're going to need a more brace because you don't want to injure a disc or a joint. So I start with the breath. And if you think about, being stressed and us holding our breath, not only less frequency of breath, but, not as great of depth. When I was living in New York City, like everyone was coming in like short, shallow breathing. So I teach everyone how to breathe, how to access it, how to brace. And then we start working on form. So, and most people are like, we're going to talk about breath. And then you start to tell them why. And they're like, okay, I get it. Because I don't want to injure myself. Because I think that is a big fear, especially with the autoimmune population, especially with people who've never picked up a weight, is we've never done it. So I don't want to injure myself. And it would be so amazing if it was part of like high school and middle school and it was just part of the curriculum, but it wasn't,
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
really this journey of like relearning
Yeah.
how to move your body. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And breath is also a great way to regulate your nervous system.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're not lifting weights, having the ability and the capacity to breathe in different ways and to kind of play with the breath is such a great way to regulate the nervous system, your mind, practice mindfulness. It's a great mix of the two. It's mind, body brought into one. And even if you're like, okay, I don't have the energy to do a workout right now, even the practice of breath work, connecting into your body, like you said, the more deep breaths instead of the shallow breaths and sucking in your stomach and all that. I mean, there's a huge impact on just your overall well-being, mental clarity, so many things. It doesn't even have to get to, I always like very incremental growth. It's not about just going from 0 to 100. It really is laying the foundation, learning the basics, tuning into yourself, and honoring what you're needing day to day.
Yeah. 100%.
And
Yeah.
what about mental resiliency? How do you like to approach movement and building resiliency in that way?
Yeah. So I think there's this movement right now of, oh, we're always stressed. So how can we de-stress, or how can we disassociate or detach from stress, or don't stress? And I think it's a weird message because stress is inevitable. So why don't we use stress to our advantage to build resiliency in ourselves so that when an even bigger stressor comes, we're not totally floored and sidelined and in bed. Because that's what happens with the autoimmune population, is like a stressor happens and it can trigger all of our
Yeah.
symptoms, like we're going through a flare up. So I like to, because oftentimes the, like vagal nerve toning or doing those stress exercises is done in a state of seated or calm, or like we're not really using it in the moment.
Hmm.
So I like to do it during the rest breaks. So you pick up a heavy weight, you're challenging yourself, your heart rate goes up, your breath rate goes up. It feels very challenging. It is a stressor, physical stressor. And then during the rest breaks, doing some sort of vagal nerve toning. And rest breaks are usually longer than what you would experience at like a, fitness
A
boutique
boot camp.
fitness class.
Hmm.
Yeah, like a boot camp. I
Hmm.
was thinking like Barry's boot camp.
Hmm.
So you're humming, you're singing, you are putting your tongue on the roof of your mouth and extending your exhale so it's twice as long as your inhale. Um, Shaking out your body, right? So you've built tension, everything. You've like learned how to really dial in and recruit tension all the way from your feet up to wherever you're pulling so that you can pull a heavier weight. But you don't want to stay in that tense
Yeah.
place. You want to use your rest break to shake it out,
Yeah.
to tone the vagus nerve. So, and then you're using it in a moment where you actually need to like address stress. So it's kind of like sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic. So that's how I like to use it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I used to be a big yogi, like yoga teacher trainings, and would fly to Costa Rica. And I always felt like there was so much focus of do the yoga practice so that you can prepare yourself for meditation. But then when I would be in a moment of a really uncomfortable conversation in New York City, I didn't feel like I had the tools to deal with it. And
Mhm.
I would literally in the moment of this awkward conversation or a difficult conversation want to go and like sit on a meditation pillow. And I was like, but that's not
Yeah.
the point, right? The point is to have this conversation, get to the other side. Hopefully there's a good outcome and your nervous system wasn't totally
Yeah.
fried such that.
Yeah.
So that was a moment I was like, oh, like the practice that I think is supposed to have this outcome that I desire is not like it's not getting me to my outcome. So I was like, hey, how can we do this in a different way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Use the skills when you need them instead of this perfect bubble of an environment where you can do
Yeah.
it perfectly because there's no stressor.
Yeah.
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 And I love that you brought light to that because I always say, like, I love the concept of anti-fragile. It's like any little stress can actually help build resiliency and strength and using it for growth and learning and evolution instead of having it just totally break you down. And I think that that's like the gift of a really strong, healthy mindset too, is looking at your challenges and obstacles and seeing, okay, where do I need to go inside and maybe reconfigure something and come back stronger or come back with a different perspective or learn a new tool or a skill instead of just trying to avoid stress or pain or discomfort. I mean, with therapy, it's, literally like distress tolerance skills and the
Right.
vagal tone, strengthening that is absolutely a piece of it. So I love that you're bringing that into actually the strength training portion of like mind body once again.
Yeah. And I'm sure you see this like way more than I do, which is the people who ruminate and don't take action are like in this, like they are the most stressed.
Yes.
And you just want to like
Yes.
give them a little bump,
Yeah.
right? To just like one step forward, even if it's in the wrong, like even if it's not the right step,
Yeah.
hypothetically, it's a step.
Yeah.
So yeah, I noticed that the women with autoimmune conditions who are like, oh, I'm so stressed all the time and have easy flare-ups, they're in a rumination cycle and they don't take action.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's such a good point. The willingness to try something different. That's always my invitation. Is I don't believe in right or wrong choices. I think it's either moves you forward or you learn something from it, reassess and try again. And
Yeah.
absolutely just the willingness to try something new, even if it's a new perspective or a new belief or literally just getting out of the mind and taking an action and then reassessing. Did that work? Did that help? Did it harm? Was it good for me? Was it, a setback? Like it doesn't matter, but getting out of the stuckness is such a huge part of all of this.
Yeah. And then you have like, let's say it's a difficult conversation and you get to the other side, you're like, oh, who else can I have a conversation
Yes.
with? Like the momentum of it is so powerful.
Yes. Yes. And I think
Yeah.
for me too, like learning to train my body in a way where it's focused on like vitality and feeling strong and feeling good, like that absolutely affects how I show up in my day. I
Yeah.
lift something heavy and I'm like, I feel invincible. I that's such a real time way of just seeing strength grow, and then having that resilience internally too of like, okay, well, I put myself through a physical challenge that felt really exhilarating. How can I apply that into the mental challenge? And
Yeah.
also with the caveat, obviously, if there's any kind of unhealthy relationship to exercise or obsessive kind of relationship, that's completely on its own, you know, page. That's not what we're talking about here. But physically connecting to your body and allowing yourself to feel strong and grow physically really can correlate with mental strength and resilience as well.
Yeah. And think about how many women, you use the word invincible, which is so on point. How many people have never felt that?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, absolutely.
kind of crazy. I
Absolutely.
did in 2021, I did this experiment because I wanted to put myself in the body of the women who were joining the program Thyroid Strong and just like remember what it's like to be a beginner. So I only walked for 3 weeks. That was like my exercise. I'd get 10,000 steps, I'd walk. I'm in Colorado. It's beautiful, it's sunny. And like 10 days in, and it was for 3 weeks. 10 days in, I was like taking naps at 2 p.m. I was depressed. I was like, what is my purpose on this earth? Like, what is the point? Like, kind of like, those kind of questions. And kept with the experiment. And I was like depressed. And at the end of the experiment, I did like a 20-30 minute kettlebell workout of like deadlifts, pressing, and swings. And I was like, oh, I wasn't depressed. I just hadn't lifted weights. But it was such a good experiment because so many people are coming with a lot of fear, have never lifted
Yeah.
weights. Well, they're like, well, I exercise, I
Yeah.
walk. And you're like, okay, that's a good start, but
Absolutely.
I think there's like, there's more we can do. And just where their mindset's coming from, because with an autoimmune condition, especially being hypothyroid, depression, anxiety is very common.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it was very eye-opening because it was very ugly for like 3 weeks, and then literally 30 minutes and like your life can
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. Well, it's very empowering to know that there's things that you can do to work with your own body. It's not just the medication or the things
Yeah.
outside of you, but literally just feeling empowered. And don't go from zero to hero, right? Like, don't go from walking to, like doing crazy workouts. There has to be that connection, learning to listen to your body, tune into your body, how to move your body, how to position your body. It really is a slow, incremental growth here. And that's how you can start to feel better and more empowered in your physical presence, even. But yeah, like I think that's kind of a lot of my clients are that very type A, very like, I want results now. I want to feel better now. I want to feel stronger now. And you have to go through the breath, the posture, the alignment, the listening to the physical sensations before you go into lifting weights or doing anything more hardcore than what you're typically doing.
Yeah, and I would just say the other characteristic I've noticed of more of the type A crowd is that it has to be done perfectly,
Yes.
or that if I miss a
Yeah.
workout, it's like, oh,
Yes.
right? There, there should be failure when you lift weights. You should literally be like, okay, I'm going to do 8 reps, and you get to 6 and you can't
Yeah.
finish it.
Yeah.
Like that is where the muscle growth happens. And I think type A personalities are like, well, I didn't do all, like they beat
Yeah.
themselves up about it.
Yeah.
With the reps. And so it's definitely a mindset shift of, yeah,
Like tuning in instead of
yeah,
what's the external expectation is 8 reps and my body did 4, 5.
Right.
Okay, great. That's learning. That's where your body is right now. There is no right or wrong. It's, again, being willing to engage and grow and be involved in the process instead of only doing it if you can do it right.
Yeah. And I think it's also like, it's almost a practice of observation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like when they
Mindfulness.
talk about in meditation and mindfulness, they're like, okay, like clouds in the sky, you don't judge them, you just watch them
Yeah.
pass. It's the same thing. It's like, oh, I did 6 reps instead of 8. I went to failure, which is actually a win. And now I know, oh, I can choose a different weight next time, or I should dial in my sleep, or maybe I
Mm-hmm.
should like,
Mm-hmm.
change
Absolutely.
how I'm eating so that I can get a win versus, if it was 8 reps and you did 20, I would be like, let's pick up a heavier weight, right? Like more is not
Yeah.
better in
Yeah.
this situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
think it like that's very common with more of the
Yeah.
type A is that it like, oh, my workout has to be perfect. And I think the other thing is like working out, I think on social media is very glamorized. Like we're in a bra and booty shorts and we're like
Perfect outfit.
perfect outfit and the makeup's perfect.
I know,
And
right?
my workout is very rarely like that unless it's on camera. It is
Yeah.
like in
Yeah.
sweats and it's ugly and it's ugly faces and sometimes it's huffing and it
Yeah.
is very the opposite of like what a perfect workout looks like on Instagram.
Yeah, yeah. It shouldn't be perfect because it's not real life. I really like, again, longevity and sustainability. It's not about what can you do once, but it's what can you keep coming back to? What is serving you? What is making you feel the way you want to feel? And what is in your best interest for the long run? It's not just like doing it once and great, I succeeded. Self compassion is a huge part of this journey too. Self talk, what is going on in your inner world? How are you judging yourself, comparing yourself, criticizing yourself? I mean, how do you value yourself and where is your self-worth? Like so much of this comes together. It's not just about the workout or the thyroid symptoms. We're a complete complex organism, right? We need to approach ourselves with compassion and gentleness. And again, I keep coming back to this word, attunement, attuning to your individual needs and your best interests.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Love
I don't
that.
want to take up too much of your time. I know I asked for about 30 minutes of your time, so I really appreciate you giving us some. Did you want to touch a little bit on the mold topic since that was very relevant in your life right now?
We can. Um, so I am very sensitive to mold, and it has been a big part of my healing journey. Like it was one of the things I addressed to help put my own Hashimoto's into remission, along with like changing how I was eating, how I was working out, and then some other environmental factors. And probably since 2014, we lived in a moldy condo in Brooklyn, moved out to Colorado, bought a house that was water damaged. Have been in like this is will be our fifth rental, and it has mold.
Mm,
And
mm,
our
mm.
some of our older rentals have had mold as well. And um, I'll tie it back to attunement. When we moved into this rental in August, I was crashing at 2 p.m. And it's one of those things like if I feel like someone's turned off the light switch and I need to take a nap like right now, one of the things that I think about is like, okay, that happens when I'm in mold. And I was like, oh, it's like a newer house. It's like 2002. Most of the houses in the area are like 1960s. And I was like, you know what? Maybe it's just the altitude. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, this like water patch in our kitchen showed up. And I didn't want to just open it up and bring a plumber in because if there's mold up there, it would just blast it, mold particles all over the house. So I got a scope, stuck it up there. Sure enough, there's like, as far as the eye can see on that drywall in the kitchen, there's mold.
Mm.
So the remediation team came on Monday, and it's kind of like peeling back the layers of an autoimmune condition. They like cut right where the water leak was, but then it was like, oh, we need to take out like 8 feet of drywall and cabinetry to the left. And then it was, oh, well, let's look at the subfloor at the master bath above. They pulled out the subfloor. The subfloor has mold. So now they just set up a containment today to start tearing up the bathroom.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm grateful that, that we can do this kind of work and do it properly and containment and not spread mold all over the house. But I think from so many years of having a sympathetic response, like seeing water damage and literally having like
Yeah.
PTSD response,
Yeah.
um, and having done some of the like vagal toning work and nervous system regulation, like
Hmm.
they've been working in the house for 4 days and I'm not like comatose in bed freaking out. I can like go on with my day
Yeah. Yeah.
and not get that like PTSD trigger.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still really
Of
annoying, but it's
course.
been many years of work.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Perfect
my mole story.
example of
Yeah.
how to use your skills in real life
Yeah.
situations that are unavoidable.
That are unavoidable.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it really
There's
is.
only so many factors in our lives that we can really have effect over, and the rest we really have to use our skills and take care of ourselves to the things that are happening outside of us that are outside of our control.
Yeah, 100%.
I always like to leave these conversations by asking my guest, what is your favorite way to take care of yourself? What is a nice self-care practice that you could leave for the audience?
Hmm. Well, I'll relate it to the mold. So I'll do like butterfly taps.
Yes.
Yes.
That was
So
a conversation a
do,
couple weeks ago.
yeah. So,
Good
yep.
old butterfly tap. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
So any moment where I am into like, oh boy, I'm like, I had a moment yesterday. I was like, what if the containment's not working? And my 4-year-old who has a runny nose right now, which could also just be a virus from school. Like, what if my kids are breathing in all these mold and mycotoxins? And I was like, I'm okay.
I love it.
It's
I
gonna
love
be
it.
okay.
Yes.
Like, I hired professionals who've been doing this for many years for a reason
Yes.
to pay a lot of money. Like, there's a reason.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So butterfly taps, I love.
Amazing. I love
Yep.
that. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation. I really appreciate it. I'm hopeful that it helped a lot of people out and gave them little tips to go research for themselves and see if, it could be beneficial for their journeys. How can people find you? What are the best ways for people to interact with you?
Yeah. I mean, here on Instagram, main
Great.
platform. Yeah.
Dr.
Yep.
Emily Kiberd,
Yep.
you will be tagged.
Awesome.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having
Bye.
me. Bye.